Guest interview, Michael Hingson, New York Times #1 bestseller author, speaker, and envisioner.
Like I have the honor to invite, like the guest of honor of this webinar, that is Michael Hingson. Plenty of you who are attending this webinar probably already have heard of him, but he's a best-selling author and a motivational speaker, and he also happens to be an envisioner. Mike, excited to have you on this webinar, and I thank you, for being a part of it. How are you doing today?
Well, doing well. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. So I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. So Mike, like of course you have been wearing a lot of different hats. Everybody has heard about the incredible story of you and and like your guide dog, like Roselle, and how that whole fateful event at your 9/11 happened. But yeah, like I think I want to ask you some fundamentals of how that has defined your thinking, and what does action, what does taking action really like mean for you? So if you can shed some like light into that.
I think if September 11th, in my experience, really means anything, it is that any of us, whether we're blind or not, can be put in any situation at any time. And the more that we are recognizing that we are as capable as people with eyesight and exercise our independence and become a part of the world, that we're more likely to be in any of those situations at any time. So I was in the World Trade Center and did some things that perhaps a lot of people might not have thought of doing, but I was the leader of an office. I ran an office for Quantum Corporation, and I chose to learn all that I could about what to do in an emergency, as well as learning everything I could about how to travel around the World Trade Center, both in terms of dealing with emergency exits and emergency evacuation procedures, but just traveling around the center. And I did all of that because I knew that oftentimes I might be in the office alone when my colleagues or my employees were out selling and supporting customers, because that's where I wanted them, out selling. And I might not be out there with them. I might be in doing the things that I needed to do. So I had to know everything for myself in order to be able to function. But it developed a mindset that told me that when something happened, although I didn't even think about it at the time, I could function and not necessarily fear what was happening. Well, sure enough, all of that came together on September 11th. And the first thing that happened to us is the airplane hit the building and the building tipped, and then it came back to a normal upright position. And people were saying, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And I was saying, slow down. And what I realized was I was saying slow down because I had next to me a guide dog, Roselle, who wasn't giving me any indication that she was sensing anything that caused her fear. And I knew what she was like when she was afraid. So again, it's all about observing your surroundings, drawing conclusions, and taking that microsecond, if you will, to deal with and know what to do and how to address different situations, and to bring that mindset to focus. So I think that taking action really starts with preparation in whatever you do. And yes, it is true that there's no way that we could have truly prepared. And certainly people have said, well, how did your dog get trained to deal with an emergency like that? You don't train a dog to do that. The person has to be trained, because the job of a guide dog is to make sure that we walk safe, not to know where to go and what to do. That's the preparation that we need to do. And I think that any individual in taking action or accomplishing anything has to start with preparation and working toward making sure that as much as we possibly can, we know what to do, and teaching ourselves in our minds that we can take that action and move forward accordingly. So that would be probably my best answer for you.
Wow, no, that makes a lot of sense. And the preparation is key. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And I think I would be curious to understand if if there has been any sort of a change in your perspective about things, that like before and after the event. Like is there a few topics or things about which your perspective you changed after this experience?
Oh, I think so. Or at least my perspectives have become more firm. I think that the issue is that what happened on September 11th wasn't anything that we could have expected to happen. Who would have thought that someone would have deliberately crashed airplanes into the towers? I'm sure that someone must have thought about that, just because we tend to be a society and a race that likes to think about what if, but no one thought about it seriously enough that they did anything, and I don't hold anyone responsible for that. I don't think that we could have determined in advance that somebody on September 11th was going to crash aircraft into the towers, but they did. And I think that for me, one of the most important things that has happened is that I've developed an attitude and a perspective that says, don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on the things you can and let the rest take care of itself. Because the bottom line is, if you don't have control over it, you can fret about it all day, you can worry about it all day, and it's not going to get you anywhere. So we really need to focus on the things that we do have control over, and we need to not focus and worry so much about the rest. It will make our lives less stressful. It will help us learn to control our fears, and as I like to say, not be blinded by fear. And I'm working on a new book. We wrote Thunderdog, and you mentioned being a best-selling author. Thunderdog, the story of a blind man, his guide dog, and the triumph of trust, was published in 2011. And we're now writing a third book. The middle book was more for children, about Roselle and me growing up and meeting and so on. But the third book deals with something that I decided to think about during the pandemic, which is, I've talked to people a lot about not being afraid, but I've not talked to people about how we can learn to control fear. And as I, again, like to say, not be blinded by fear. The typical expectation is something happens, you get panicky, you get worried, you lose control over your ability to make immediate decisions. And that's, of course, the issue that happened with me on September 11th. And so I learned and established a mindset that said you can focus on dealing with what you need to. And your fear is something that can be a powerful motivator and a powerful mechanism to get information, rather than you allowing it to overwhelm you so that you can't do anything. So we're writing a new book that'll be out next year that talks about all that. And it's going to be based around my 8 guide dogs that I have had over the last 59 years, and talking about the lessons I've learned from them and the lessons that they teach people and that guide dogs teach people about fear and not control, or not being overwhelmed by it, but rather controlling it. So it's going to be kind of fun when that one comes out.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would be looking forward to that already. Actually, that sounds like a great book
Me too.
to read. And speaking of having a control over things, and speaking of being able to make the decisions, that's been one of the fundamental goals behind us building a tool like Envision, is offering people the choice, offering people the control, so that they can use the information that they gather to make better decisions for themselves. You have been a user of Envision for a while, so yeah, I think I would just be interested in understanding how you have been using, not just Envision, but any other assistive technologies in general, to sort of help you have the control and to be able to make the decisions.
I think we need to put assistive technology in the right light, if you will. And that is that if you go back and think about the electric light, Thomas Edison invented it in 1878. And why did he do that? He developed, as we would say with the Americans with Disabilities Act, a reasonable accommodation for light-dependent people that gave them light on demand. And we have spent the last 122 and almost 150 years developing and improving the technologies to give light to people so that they don't have to worry about getting around in the dark. The reality is that that covers up their disability of being light dependents. and light dependent, I should say. And the fact is that that is a disability and most people have it, but it's covered up by technology. Well, assistive technology, whether it's that or the kinds of things that we as blind people use, it's still the same thing. It's dealing with addressing the specific gifts or challenges that we or any group has. So for us as blind people, using things like the KNFB reader or BD scan or IRA or Envision are technologies that give us access to things that we otherwise might not have access to. But in magically speaking, it's no different than the light bulb. And we need to mentally get people to recognize that. So I do use IRA, I use Envision, I use several different kinds of devices to know what's on a printed page, or with dealing with a computer like JAWS I use to read screens and so on. And it's all about getting access to information. And the latest one in a lot of senses is Envision. And I also do work with Assistive that makes internet website products to help make internet websites more usable for people by providing a number of tools to help website developers make their websites more usable for people who happen to be blind. But for Envision, it has opened a lot of doors in a lot of different ways. The most important one for me and what got me started working with Envision was when Envision really made it possible and affordable to get the glasses. God made eyes in the middle of a person's head so that they were up high enough so that people could get a good look at what's going on around them. And the glasses that we use, although I hope over time they will improve and we will have different and better glasses, the glasses that we use give us that same vantage point and nothing else does. So I love the fact that the glasses make it possible for me to do a lot of things like travel through airports, traveling around, getting more information from IRA agents, and being able to do a number of other things like with instant text and so on, which has become one of my favorite features, being able to just look towards something and my gosh, it reads it, and it reads it really well. So I'm very happy with that.
Awesome, good to know. And I think I love that Thomas Edison like metaphor that you had there. I'm gonna steal that one. I'm gonna use that a lot because I think that
Go ahead.
makes a lot of sense. And I think that's also in line with how we look at innovation in our space as well. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that. And maybe just to like to wrap up, this is a question we ask everybody: is if if you ever, is there something about Envision that surprised you? Sort of like when you like used it, like when of course you had heard about it a bit before, but was there something that was that took you by surprise when you like used it in your everyday life?
Having heard about instant text, I'm really impressed and surprised by how well it works, even better than reading text, although there are advantages to both. But for me, I tend to use instant text more to be able to just look towards something and it reads it. And the other thing that surprises me is how much the company has been very involved with users and is taking input to heart and doing things like the things that you talked about at the beginning of this webinar, the find feature and so on, which has become so much better. And the fact that we're seeing artificial intelligence concepts being brought into Envision in relevant and useful ways. I think that is really cool and has been a surprise. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what will happen over the next few years and how much Envision is going to grow and how more helpful it will be and how more it integrates with products like IRA to make it possible to use the agents and other things that artificial intelligence can't totally do today. Some people say, well, eventually AI will take everyone's jobs. I don't think so. There are always going to be things that people are going to be able to do better than any kind of technical product because the humans are the ones that really ultimately do the innovation. And I don't think we're close yet to having technology that can do that. So it's a team between AI and what it can do and what people can do. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all the things that will happen over time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I also appreciate the time that you've given us to be here today. Anything you would like to plug in the end? You did I mention your book? Do you have a date of when it is coming out, and anything else you would like to share about your other works?
Our title for the book, our working title, is Live Like a Guide Dog, and you have to read the book to really understand it. It looks like it will be around July of 2024 or possibly into August. That seems to be a popular time for books to be released. But Thunderdog is still out there, and I hope people will get it. And of course, as you mentioned, I do travel and speak. My wife passed away this past November, so my time is more my own, and looking for ways to go travel and speak and help inspire others and teach more people about blindness and the fact that blindness isn't the problem. It's our attitudes about blindness that are the real challenge that we all face.
Thank you, Michael Hingson. For more information, visit let'senvision.com.